This was a really fun game where I was extremely aggressive, drew out my opponent's king, and just kept pushing him around the board. Starts off pretty basic, e4, e5, we bring out the knights, nothing special. Then I go into the Scotch game, he accepts, and I go right into the Scotch gambit. The idea being that I'll eventually bring my knight up to g5 and put some kind of fried liver pressure on the f7 pawn. He sees that and he blocks my knight from going there with this push. I go ahead and just sacrifice my bishop regardless. So when he grabs that, he's up a full piece, but he can no longer castle, and his king is kind of hanging out there. I go ahead and claim one of the center pawns. He exchanges pieces, and at this stage, neither of us have really developed any of our pieces, but my king is set to do a very safe castle, and he's kind of here more hanging in the wind. He opens up his white bishop file, and I bring in my knight to kind of solidify the center and just develop a little bit. He pushes here to try and get my queen off of the center, and I counter with this attack, which, yeah, it's a check. It doesn't do too much because he could just push me out with his bishop, kind of get his development going a little bit. I could, conceivably do something like this check, and then, he'd either retreat or he could push me out and I could do something like this. He ends up playing this kind of passive move where he goes back to his starting square. So I go ahead and capitalize on my castling advantage with the idea that I'm eventually going to want to get my rook onto the e file here to keep pushing this pawn up because he no longer has a center pawn here. I am still down 2 points of material. So when he does this counterattack with the knight, so it basically forces me back to d3, so I get out of attack, but also defend the pawn. Here it looks like he's starting to initiate a pawn rush, but I'm gonna stick with my plan and just continue claiming this e-file, putting a lot of pressure indirectly on his king, who again cannot castle anymore. So he continues his pawn rush, and at this stage, I push up here very aggressively. There's a lot going on. Obviously, I'm attacking his knight. If he were to just try and capture straight up here though, this is a pretty powerful attack because his king cannot retreat on the E file or the D file, and he also can't go to the F file because then that just loses the queen straight up and it's essentially game over. So instead, he does this kind of cute counterattack where he pushes his knight up. Now that's attacking this pawn. But I go ahead for this counterattack where now I'm throwing an unblockable check and I'm also attacking his knight here. This only gives him 2 squares where he can retreat to. One of them is here, which blocks his own bishop from defending his knight. And then the other square he could have gone to is here, where I think this move is pretty devastating because, again, he's not in check or anything, but he needs to be very careful because if he does anything other than defending with the queen here, there's some pretty devastating attacks I got going on. I don't know how fully he considered the pros and cons of either of those king moves, but he chooses this one, and I probably moved too quickly here because I didn't even consider this check, which I think would have been pretty devastating. He can't go this way because this is checkmate, and if he goes either of these squares, it's pretty dicey because I can start bringing either my knight into the attack here with the check, or just some of my other pieces. This is a pretty bad position for him to be in. So instead though, I'm a little hasty and I just end up grabbing the knight for free, and now I'm ahead in material. He doesn't really have any piece development. Again, there's nothing really stopping me from continuing to push this e-file pawn. He retreats this way. Now it's a discovered attack on my queen, and I go ahead and throw this kind of interstitial check. He can't really block me here. Well, he can, and he ends up doing that, but it's kind of a very dicey position because he's just creating a pin on his king. And sure enough, when he does that, I just slide my rook over because now I have 2 pretty nasty pins on the same piece here, which is also being attacked by a knight. So when he sees that, he defends it with his bishop, but I play this cute move where the basic idea is if he tries to just capture the knight for free, I would capture back with the queen and a check, and now I'm also attacking his queen with my rook. I thought that was extremely clever in the moment, but in retrospect, it's not actually as strong as I hoped, because say he did capture and I recapture, yes, he's in check, but if he just blocks with the bishop, now he actually has the advantage and I'm forced to kind of retreat. So I do this cute move, which isn't as strong as I think in the moment. It does seem to spook him though, because he plays this bishop move, which I don't fully understand what he was going for with it, but I play my own bishop move mostly to connect my rooks here, because I am a little worried that if we have some exchanges, I don't want my back rank being weak. He attacks my queen. That move doesn't really do very much though, so I just back out here. He still can't capture my knight with the pawn, because then I just go ahead and grab his queen. So he plays this move, which again, not as threatening as it looks, because what's he gonna do? If he captures my bishop with his pawn, then again, his queen is still pinned. I still don't love it though, so I play this blunder of a move, but this is a blunder because he can just go ahead and straight up grab the bishop for free. Thankfully, it's a blitz game. He didn't see that I blundered my bishop, and instead he plays this counter-attacking move to try and get my bishop out of there. That's not a terrible move because I don't have a lot of escape squares. So when I go to one of my only escape squares with the bishop, he continues the pressure. I think his idea is he wants to try and trap my bishop by eventually doing one more pawn push. But this pawn isn't being covered by a rook anymore. So I just go ahead and grab it for free, essentially completely blunting whatever counterattack chances he had on the king side. I throw this counter check, which is pretty strong. Obviously, he cannot block it with his white bishop. Similarly, he can't really block it nicely with his bishop or his rook or his queen, because I can just capture with my knight, taking all the pressure off that his bishop was having. So really, I'm thinking at this stage, he's pretty much going to be forced to retreat back into the safety of where his queen is, and then I can get aggressive and start, attacking more with my knight in here. But then he actually surprises me by playing this move where he's kind of coming deeper into enemy lines, and that just feels extremely dangerous to me. So I throw this very cute counter check where he can't just capture with the pawn because it is now pinned. Plus I'm setting up this pretty nasty file where his king and his queen are on the same file. So he goes way deep into the wilderness here, and I'm really, hoping I could throw like a counter check like this. Unfortunately, that would leave this knight undefended, so I cannot do that. So I'm kind of forced to play this intermediary move. He throws this counterattack, and I see the appeal of it because it looks like he just won an undefended pawn. Now he's attacking my rook over here. In truth, though, I think that was a mistake because his bishop was the only thing defending against this square, where now my queen can throw this check. He's kind of going to be hard-pressed to defend against that unless he offers a trade of queens. I don't know, because if I throw a check here, would that... Yeah, I guess that loses the queen for him straight up. So when I throw this check, he is basically forced into going even deeper into enemy territory, and that's what he does. And here I'm able to throw a pawn check, and he doesn't have a lot of great options. He cannot go to either of these white squares because of my queen. He can't go here because my knight and my pawn are covering it. So he only has 2 escape squares that he can go to. He chooses this one, and I throw, again, what I think is a very cute check. He cannot just capture with the pawn. I mean, he can, but then he loses his queen. He's never resolved the pin on his queen, and that's really costing him at this point in the game. So he retreats to one of his few remaining squares. I continue the attack with this check, and again, he cannot retreat back here. He can't go here because my knight is covering it. So he is forced to capture with the pawn, and when I recapture, this is a double check with the rook, and the pawn, which is why he can't just recapture with the bishop, for example. So he's forced to capture back with the king, but that's when I see this attack instead, which again, another cute check because he can't block it, he can't go to this file. It really limits him to either this square or one of these white squares, but these white squares are poisoned because on my very next move, I can have a discovered check by moving my knight anywhere. He chooses one of the white squares, I do the discovered check, winning a bishop in the process, but more importantly, he is still very much in the wilderness. He slides over this direction, and when I throw this check, he's forced to only going to this square, and then if I do something like this, and bring in my knight eventually, he's completely losing in this position. He's in a ton of trouble. But instead, he surprises me by blocking with the bishop here, but that's also a losing mistake because that's checkmate. But yeah, I just thought that that was a really fun game. I did have the one bishop blunder here where I hung my bishop. These things happen in a blitz game, and instead I'm just really happy that I was able to play super aggressively and just keep the pressure up and just keep moving his king around the board. Anyway, thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments section what you thought of my aggression in this game.